All pop culture references mentioned during this podcast are analyzed and scored by artificial intelligence. Jeff and Chris have learned not to argue with AI's decisions and strongly suggest you shut your mouth as well.
All right, Chris. Well, hey, interesting news. We're almost at episode 60. That is 60.
Wow.
Episode 60. Yeah. So this is episode number 58. And by gosh, Chris, I mean, I know you said a million times you're not the best at math, but can you tell we're getting close to 60?
Which means we're getting close to my average geometry quiz score. So
Right.
absolutely, yeah, I can tell we're getting. I guess we're close to 60 literally and figuratively. So that's crazy.
I guess the next episode will be they used to call it the golden birthday, right? When your age matched the day you were born, right? Or the date you were born. That for me, that was the 7th. So I was 7 on the 7th.
Right.
What was your golden birthday?
I was 11 on the 11th, I guess. I didn't even know that, but wow.
Chris, knowing a little bit more about your dad, I'm guessing he wasn't looking for any sort of an excuse on your part to get more presents on that particular birthday. I feel like he might have just slipped that under the carpet there, so to speak. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, cool. So episode number 58. And as always, let's go ahead and take a quick look at episode 57. Let's check in with the artificial intelligence machine and let's see how we did on that last episode. And again, AI is scoring us. We have nothing to do with it. It searches for all of the different polls. It ranks them as obscure, moderately obscure, kind of common, or God forbid, a nice poll. Awards the points. And for anybody that ever wants to dive into that minutia, don't forget, just go to nicepollpod.com, click on scoreboard, and by God, you could sit there for hours just combing through all the nonsense.
Yes, please do.
Who got what. Yeah. All right.
Please
well,
do.
Chris, I'm taking a quick look at it right now. You're taking a quick look at it right now. We, of course, had me, because Danny Bonaduce was the guest for a minute or two on the last episode, talked a lot about the Partridge Family. I made a horribly tasteless joke about poor little Tracy Partridge being on Klonopin. That is, that's pretty dark. But she does stare into space a lot on that show, in my defense. We talked a lot
We don't know that she wasn't on Klonopin. Okay, in your defense. Okay.
We talked a lot about the horrible Pina Colada song, which is actually Escape. That's the name of the song, but it's also AKA the Pina Colada song. I made a weird theory come to life that maybe the guy the guy that is the subject of the song, maybe he was really on death row and he was getting lethally injected and he was dreaming about his wife as she looked through the two-way glass at him dying, that they were sharing pina coladas. So Chris, I may have taken that too far.
Okay, I'll give you some slack. It's less than Klonopin, so let's just say it that way.
All right.
Okay.
I did get some points. I got 90,000 points for doing a Kids in the Hall poll, right?
Wow.
I made a reference to an episode of Kids in the Hall called Girl Drink Drunk, where the guy was an alcoholic, but he would only drink girl drinks with umbrellas. Then I got some points, which is nice, for Cats in the Cradle. And Cats in the Cradle, one of the saddest, most depressing songs of all time. And I did make some references to that, and I did get 15,000 points. I like what it says here. Popular song, but well-timed mention. Okay, so I got a little bit on that one.
Ooh.
And then, of course, the Partridge Family, you and I both did this. We both came up with a very obscure Partridge Family episode. Mine was the one where Lori Partridge gets braces, and she starts picking up radio stations in her skull. And that was worth 85,000 points. But Chris, I want to go to your polls. And the first one here, Partridge Family Bus Logistics, Tambourine Storage. That was that was when you were talking about
Uh,
this thought in your head on how many tambourines Tracy had and how many
that's why they needed the bus. That's why they needed a bus.
that's why they needed the bus to hold that many tambourines,
Yes,
exactly.
I stand
Uh,
by that.
you also just, killed me on this. You also mentioned a very obscure episode of The Partridge Family, but you got 102,000 points. Why? It
Oh,
was the episode where Danny got drafted into the military at the tender age of 12, and you went
right.
frame by frame on the montage of him in boot camp like Private Benjamin, right? Something
Well,
like
it was
that.
like, yeah, he gets a draft notice essentially, which
Yeah,
unfortunately was like a death notice in at that time for some people. And
yeah.
no, just the madcap screwball humor. What could be more topically funny than the Vietnam draft and somebody getting sent to war? Or the of a 12-year-old kid, and yeah, much like the panty raids back in the Happy Days episodes, or the sock hops in the Laverne and Shirley episodes. Yes, draft notices. That's pretty damn funny. So let's do a whole episode based on it. Yeah. So that was a knee slapper. It was a classic.
You guys can't see it, but Chris's sarcasm meter is going off the hook right now. It is pegging. It's in the red.
Uh, I
Chris,
meant
you
every
also
word, Jeff.
just under your breath, as you normally do, you also pulled out a Sea of Love reference, right? You were comparing the movie Sea of Love to some of the dynamics in the Pina Colada song. So, by the way, that reference was worth 88,000 points. So nothing to scoff
Oh,
at. Yeah, pretty good. And Chris,
wow.
how about adding another 64,000 points for, again, pretty much under your breath, letting us know that Reuben Kincaid, the manager of the Partridge Family, was in fact Dave Madden. Now, look, a lot of
Okay.
trivia buffs know that. I forgot the name. You never forgot the name. And Chris can
Mm-hmm.
probably tell me. Look what AI wrote here. It says you
Uh,
got 64,000 points, but it says, but who was David Madden's manager? Huh, Chris?
maybe it was. I don't know. Was it Alice Nelson from the Brady Bunch? I don't. I have no idea. I have no idea. I guess we'll have to figure that one out. Jeez, man, tough crowd.
I'm kind of impressed with the sarcasm that artificial intelligence is able to muster. That's pretty fucking
Uh huh.
funny. Anyway, let's
Right.
get to the bottom line here, Chris. Let's look at that final
Uh-huh.
score there. And boom. All right. So, for those of you that aren't watching, those of you that are just listening in, I raked in 290,000 points, which I'm proud of. That's a pretty good score. But my buddy Chris, why don't you go ahead and read your tally?
It looks like 384,000, which would be more than Jeff's 290,000. Again, I not as well known, not the math whiz on this show, but I won.
You
I'll take
did.
it.
And by the way, Chris, I'll step in as the math expert who can do
Please
both
do.
addition and subtraction. Looks
Oh,
like you actually beat me by 94,000 points. So great job, dude. Well done. The last episode before that was a tie. So I'm glad to see the rivalry starting to kick in again here.
yes. 94,000 points, which was also my high score in Centipede. So definitely, I like that. Um, I'll take it, Jeff.
I like how
I'll
you're
take it.
commenting on your poll total by using yet another poll. That was pretty funny. That's pretty good, Chris, when you're using a centipede poll in order to talk about your poll score. Wow, well
Is that
done.
I'm padding my polls, Jeff. I know they don't roll over. It's not like rollover minutes or anything like that, but I'll take it.
Well,
I'll
once
take
you
it.
start polling, Chris, it's hard to stop. We both know that.
It's hard. It's really hard to
It
stop.
really is. All right. Well, Chris, what do we have on the old agenda for today?
Every now and then, as we were in school, and I think I may, and you probably shared this with your kids at some point because I know I have. Because every time one of my kids or one of your kids probably says, "Oh, we watched a movie in class about something or other," and even a few years ago, they were like popping in a VHS or a DVD. Now they probably just they stream it, right? They go right online and they're showing something in their class. And we had that in a, we had that in spirit, but we didn't have that in technology. And I was one of the people, and I think you were probably one of the people. We had, I need to use a term like sort of AV, right? The AV geeks, audio video geeks, or AV club, or whatever that was. I think that morphed into that over time. And did you ever have one of those days where we were going to do one of two things: show a film or show a film strip, and involved in both of those things. And good God, it was cumbersome. Good God, it was a pain in the ass. And good God, I can't believe that pass for what we had is, I mean, in retrospect, it was a good time killer, a good time waster in class. Do you remember those days? Do you remember those giant projectors or those really tiny, barely projectors and the technology, quote unquote, that we had to, hey, let's show during social studies or something like that? You remember those days?
No, I have no recollection at all. I don't even know what you're talking. Of course, yeah. So
Okay, you
the
filthy animal.
very good, right on. Home Alone. Do we both get that poll? So, and by the way, Chris, just a quick side note, you just quoted Home Alone. Do you know that there is no actual movie in that
They
scene where
made that.
they made
Mhm.
that up just for the, okay. So in the scene in Home
Get off
Alone
my
where he's trying to,
property. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
filthy animal. Yeah. So that is not from an actual film. There you go. All
Angels
right.
with Dirty Faces or something like that? I think that's what it's called within the film
Okay. Well,
within the
that
film.
has to be
They
worth something. Amazing. Well done.
it better be,
So
goddammit.
I do not remember the other technology, the film strip. I'm sure you'll remind me of it. All I remember is
Okay.
the giant reel-to-reel projector that had to be intricately threaded, right, with the film
Mhm.
itself. And I was so fascinated that a kid my age could somehow thread that film through this intricate array of like spools and pulleys, and they knew exactly how much extra loop to give it. I don't know why. That just fascinated me. I'm like, who the fuck is this kid? How long did he train to do that? Probably 10 minutes, but to me, that was amazing. And then what would happen, Chris? Inevitably, it would either burn or start to get too hot or break. And they had to, like, I don't know what they taped it with, something, probably scotch tape. I don't know how the hell they did it.
Well, first of all, I think you hit on it because I was one of those kids that got to, first of all, let's go get the projector. It's time for a film. And so you got to leave the class and go off to the AV room and I think, the entire school, I think there may have been 2, maybe 3 projectors, right, for the entire school. So you
Max.
definitely
Oh, yeah.
no, but and it was on this enormous cart, and you had to wheel this thing, and it weighed somewhere between 50 and 4,000 pounds, right? It was just this enormous, bulky, cumbersome sort of thing, and of course, and that's the one thing. Remember rolling this thing over cracked sidewalks, and the wheels were like from a discarded grocery cart, and everything. It's just everything that could go wrong with that cart because there was no money for those kind of things. But you eventually get the you eventually get the projector into the classroom. Hopefully, you didn't have to go upstairs. You used a ramp. And yes, I was one of those kids. I don't. If I got any training, it may have been one teacher showing you training that was like 2 minutes. You thread it through here, you drop it around, you wrap it around this bowl. It's okay. You press. That was the training because it. And so yes, so you had that pressure of getting that film fired up because the last thing you wanted because when you saw that projector rolling in, what did you get to think? It's like, cool. We don't have to do any learning right now, right? I can almost sleep or I can write in my slam book or I could do whatever I want. It's just I don't really have to pay much attention to whatever we were seeing. Because there was really, I don't think there was ever really any educational tie into it. If you do, it's like it almost seemed like it was just a teacher taking a couple hours off.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
for sure.
like
Oh,
we
yeah.
really needed, like we were going to learn anything from Jonathan Livingston Seagull or something like that, right? It was just
Right. Yeah.
completely right. It's unrelated to anything. I'm just going to show a film. I think maybe your teacher was hungover or was splitting up from their husband, whatever. So they'd show a film, and so you'd get this thing kind of spooled, ready to go. And even those film reels, I don't know if you remember those reels. They were huge, about the size of like a tire you know, and they were
Oh,
heavy
yeah.
because it had
Big
all that
time.
film on it. So just getting it on that arm, threading it through correctly, because yes, there was like 4 outcomes and 3 of them were bad. Okay. The first outcome was that you managed to get it right the first time and get it threaded onto the empty spool. That was the thing too. I don't know if you ever saw the empty reel. I don't know if you ever saw somebody maybe use the wrong size reel because you had to
Mm.
make sure those reels both match because if they didn't, you were going to have a mess halfway through the film. So thread it through correctly. Good positive outcome. It could break, like you said. It could get stuck and then maybe burn up against the lens, or it could just get jammed. And so miraculously managed to get it the first outcome most of the time. So you'd watch those films. You'd be responsible for that you'd have to then, after it was done, the rewinding as itself was the same sort, so it would not be through the projector. You would sort of separate the arms and do the opposite plus reverse, and hopefully it got all back on the spool, back on the reel, back in the film canister, and then back into the AV room. Um, that was a lot of pressure for an AV nerd kid back in those days.
Everything you just said now makes me realize why I am so glad I never was tasked with doing that. And looking at people like you having to deal with it still to this day blows my mind. I had no idea there was that much that went into it, but I thought that might be the case. And now that I know, it just makes me so glad that I was never, again, tasked with doing it. I can't even imagine the pressure of doing that. Now, weirdly, my very first job out of college was working in hotels doing audiovisual, but I never had to deal with the reel to reel. And to your point, as soon as that thing rolled into the classroom, all I was thinking was one thing, and I would whisper it to the person next to me: "Are we still going to have to do the test? Is there a quiz today? Do you think there's still Mr. Thill? Yes. What can we not talk and give attention now to the presentation?" And the lights went out, and we were all very excited, and we heard the sound. And Chris, eventually it would sometimes be like, "And in the 1930s," right? And then all of a sudden you would get this, and then what would you do? Would you just jump from across the room?
Well, but there wasn't anything you could do because it was a mono speaker, right, coming out of the projector. So the speaker and the projector were all one right? There was no stereo sound. There were no external speakers. There was no surround sound. So it was basically coming, you're right. And then the projector itself made a hell of a lot of noise, right?
It did.
So
It did.
if you were sitting too close to the projector,
Yeah.
you couldn't hear the sound.
No, I know.
So it was like, and so you just hear the whir. So then you're definitely writing in your slam book, or you're definitely reading Encyclopedia Brown, or you're definitely doing something to the point of like anything but this whole, uh, I don't know, the experience of watching the film. And I don't even know why I did it. Although I think there was part of me that knew at least being responsible for that. Maybe the girls were going to think I was cool. They didn't. Maybe I was going to get extra credit for it. I didn't. But maybe I'd get to spend anywhere between the going and getting it and the prep and the setup and then the taking it down and taking it back. Maybe I'd get half hour of not having to actually be in the classroom. And I did. So that was my motivation.
Who is that cute boy that is spooling the film through the projector? Oh my God. Have you ever seen a hotter guy in your life? Look at how he's threading that. Oh my God. And look at him rewind it. Oh my God, at twice the speed. Yeah, no, Chris, that might have been a dead end on that one. I'm not sure that yeah, AV monitor was going to get you high on the popularity totem pole, but hey, good for you. Someone had to do it. Do you remember any of the actual movies that you saw back then? Sometimes they were really short, right, Chris? They were just like maybe 10 or 15 minutes. Sometimes, to your point, they were full length, whatever. What stands out in your mind as film reels you saw?
Well, sometimes they were like National Geographic, you know, just sort of rejects almost, and so it's like something randomly about whales, okay? And just like, "Hey, we're gonna watch a film about whales." It's like, "Well, we're not studying whales right now." It's like, "Hey, the whale is a mammal." It's like, "Alright." So I still retain that after all these years. It's like, I think I may have learned that from one of those films, right? So it was something like that. Very, you would think, and I think as we got into high school, maybe that we got to see stuff every once in a while that may have aligned with something we were reading, right? But maybe see something in Shakespeare, but that's when we had maybe progressed already to VHS or something along those lines. But Johnny Tremaine, I think we've talked about Johnny Tremaine before. I definitely saw Johnny Tremaine, which is not real. Okay, so it's like there, it's like Johnny Tremaine is like a fake kid plugged into like the American Revolution and stuff like that. So I
Mhm.
guess if you want to make that leap to what, we're American history, it's like, "Oh, okay." It's like Superman is American history around, from the 1936 when he came out. But anyway, so I think there was that. I remember Johnny Tremaine. I remember the various sort of nature things. Like I said, I think the aforementioned Jonathan Livingston Seagull, I don't remember what it was, I just remember the title. Um, and I spent some time, a couple of years in, Catholic school before I started public school in 4th grade, and you got to see the same films every year. I think that's maybe where I had got my start in AVs. I think that's maybe how I got the gig once I switched to public school because I had experience. My resume, I had AV on it. But they used to show the same stuff around, depending, and show stuff around Easter, and they'd show stuff around Christmas, and it was like those kind of, but very, the Nativity. There was this film called The Redeemer and if you look this up, this is crazy, and this is always an interesting sort of cinematic nugget for me. There was a time they used to make films about Jesus, but they didn't show his face. Okay. Because you can't, all right? It was like considered at the time, like, well, how could you show somebody's face? So they would so you'd show a movie about Jesus. All you saw was the back of his head the entire. So it was, think of that for a minute, okay? And
I'm
there
still
was an
trying to
act.
figure out why that is. You can't see his face. Why? Why can't you see his
You couldn't
face?
show his face. It was like considered like blasphemous because nobody could possibly be the face of
Oh,
Jesus. Come on,
okay.
Jeff, get with me with
You
this.
you can't
Okay,
see
okay.
the really
Hey,
good-looking blonde-haired, blue-eyed white man? You can't see his
on that
face?
note,
Wow,
o
that's
on
crazy.
that note on that note, the first film to show Jesus's face, well, the actor portraying Jesus was called King of Kings, and that actor was a fair-haired, blue-eyed, very, Anglo-looking actor by the name of Jeffrey Hunter.
I'll be
Does that
darned.
name ring any bells for you?
It does, although I can't think of anything that Jeffrey Hunter was ever in off the
AK
top of my head. Sorry. Go.
you're gonna be angry at yourself. Jeffrey Hunter, AKA Captain Christopher Pike from Star Trek.
Oh, yeah, okay, I completely forgot, and, now, of course, he was only in a couple of the early episodes and the pilot episodes leading
Right.
into
The
Star
pilot,
Trek, the
right.
original series. I think he was in the two-parter, right? The Cage. But man, for me not to
Uh-huh.
know Christopher Pike, and, he
Mhm.
really got into a horrible accident, his character, that was not too dissimilar from Johnny Tremaine. Now,
Mhm.
Johnny Tremaine burnt his hand so badly, Chris, as I recall, his thumb was actually fused to his fucking hand. And I kept saying to myself back
Whoa.
in the day, can you actually does that happen in a fire? Can your digits like melt to each other? Because I'm an idiot. I don't know. And people are like, I don't know, man. That seems pretty extreme. But it blew my mind how bad that injury was. But then Christopher Pike, of course, the original captain of the USS Enterprise NC 1701,
Mhm.
man, he
Oh.
from the face all the way down, completely incapacitated, I think from radiation burns. But
There's a definite link between what happened to Johnny Tremaine and what happened to Christopher Pike. But and yeah, he was all mutilated and he was kind of in that little box and they had like a trial, remember? And then they showed the footage from the original Star Trek pilot so they were very resourceful in not letting that footage go to waste.
so those are some good ones. Now, I do
Mhm.
not remember anything about Jonathan
Any of them?
Livingston. I remember Johnny Tremaine, obviously. That stuck out. That one is really burned into my memory, Chris. I
Ba-dum-bum.
also have heard of Jonathan Livingston Seagull again and again and again. It seemed like almost every
Mhm.
girl in junior high school, for instance, was reading that book or was about to read that book or passed it off to someone to read that book.
Mhm.
Next to the other one that was something God, are you there? What was that one?
Are you
Hi,
there, God?
I'm
It's me, Margaret?
Margaret. Yeah, that was another big one. Yeah,
That's a
with
Judy
Jonathan
Bloom
Livingston
book.
Seagull,
Yeah.
Judy Bloom.
Right.
But the ones that stick out of my mind for whatever reason, one of them was this is a lesson, right? This one was one of those like 20-minute learn something, and it was called
Mhm.
I Am Joe's Heart. I
Uh-huh.
am Joe's Heart. And they're trying to talk to us about heart disease. Chris, can I stress here that we are maybe 13 years old and we're being lectured about
If
heart
that.
disease and how to prevent it? I'm sorry. I mean, other than, you know, a couple of the people at school that are definitely chain smoking that are my age, I don't know who here is in risk of a heart attack. But by God, for the next 30 minutes, we had to go through
Mhm.
the whole thing. And Chris, I'm going to have to show some clips because this is absolutely insane. But let's check out for just one moment Joe's Heart
Okay.
as claymation having an identity
Oh, good God.
crisis and really feeling very insecure about itself.
Well, here I am. I'm certainly no beauty. I'm red-brown in color and have an unimpressive shape. All that hearts and flowers stuff is flattering, but it's not really me. I weigh around 12 ounces. I'm about 6 inches long. And at my widest point, I'm about 4 inches across.
So, Chris, they're trying to make it fun, right? They're trying to appeal to us, but I've never seen a heart that is having an identity crisis that is actually shaming itself. It has like body dysmorphia, right? It's like, hey, I may not be that attractive. I may not be that good looking, but fuck you, asshole. You need me, right? It's just like, it's such a bizarre scene. And the heart is the narrator for the entire film.
Right.
And Chris, now we have Joe, right? Who is the typical 30-something-year-old
Joe.
husband. He's Joe. And Chris, he
He's
is
chain
not taking
smoking.
care of himself. Oh, he is smoking. He's having that extra piece of cherry pie. He is not.
He's drinking.
He is not. He's drinking. He's not exercising. And then all of a sudden, Chris, he starts to get the chest pains. Right? Guess what he does?
Mhm.
He goes out and plays a little pickup game with his buddies,
Oh,
thinking
Joe.
that he's
No,
in good
Joe.
shape. Yeah, no.
No.
And oh man, that was a
Don't.
bad idea, Chris, as they told us, don't go exercising if you're not in shape. Who are they talking to again? What is the crowd here? All of us have the metabolism of a fucking hummingbird. Like every single person there could eat 100 Zoo Sundays and 2 gallons of peanut butter and bounce back instantly. I don't even know who they're talking to yet, but okay.
Well, wait a minute. How am I going to get in shape then? So it's like there's got to be some sort of middle ground where Joe's got to put down the Johnny Walker and got to push himself away, from the table and maybe stub out his, half a pack of Pall Malls before he finishes the whole thing. But
That's right.
you're right. It's with the exception of those 1 or 2 kids that may have, maybe ate a few too many scooter pies and, every class sort of had them. But we weren't quite into body shaming yet. So they kind of would get a pass other than they were the ones that always came in last when we had to do like the 6-minute jog walk or something like that. And that would became like very obvious that maybe their mom needs to like lighten the portion size.
Maybe only one zinger in the old lunchbox there. Only one snowball, right? Yeah, it's supposed to be the jog walk, not the jiggle walk. Yeah, we know. What happens, of course, he has a heart attack and they have to rip out his heart and find a pig and then go to the farmer and yank the heart out of the pig and get it there in ice and then put the pig's heart in there. And then he starts acting like a pig and he starts going crazy. Or that was the dream that I had 2 days after watching it. One of
I
the
was,
two.
I was, yeah, I don't quite. I'm gonna go with the second. I don't think that's actually what happened.
Let's rewind. That didn't happen, but he has the heart attack and now he's better for it. And what I love about it is, Chris,
Right.
they make it seem like now he's only eating salads and presumably for the rest of his life.
Mhm.
And the wife who's in the counseling with him goes, "Oh, he's been doing very well about just eating salads. I guess forever." Right? Well, there you go. Good job, Joe. Salads for the rest of your life. And how old are you?
Yes.
32 years old? Anyway, again, it was totally lost
And
on
no
me why
dressing.
I'm like, I went home. My mom, who was always in the medical field, right? She worked with doctors and was again, I said this before, she was a phlebotomist, they called it back then, but it's a lab technician. I said, my God, am I in danger? And she's like, what the are you talking about? No, you're fine. You're good.
Mhm. Well, because it aligned with all of the ways they tried to scare us back in those days, and so they
Yeah.
thought, well, you know what? Let's just hit these kids with everything we got, and heart disease, or I am Joe's pancreas, to the point of like, and so even the messaging was just like they had to, it made no sense because even an organ talking about I'm not the most attractive organ, name an attractive internal organ. There are none.
Well, Chris, the gallbladder is kind of cute. I mean, if you looked at a gallbladder, they got something going
I'll
on
give you
there.
that.
Yeah. The other one that blew my mind on the same, I think this happened back to back. I think the very next week on a Thursday, we had another film reel come in,
Mhm.
and this was a health one again. And this one was don't smoke. And I have no recollection of anything leading up to this one scene. Chris, they actually showed a guy getting his lung removed. And I mean up close with to spare no detail. They may as well have been showing a C-section. It was the entire chest. Here comes the spreader. The entire chest is laid bare. There are people in the classroom getting sick, almost fainting, falling over, gasps, and one person literally in the back of the room openly weeping, just like crying as you see this guy's black lung that they're taking out. And then later on, he's in recovery. Well, I guess I really dodged a bullet there. And again, now he can only smoke salad, apparently.
Mhm.
So that was horrific. And obviously, if I'm talking about it now, as a 59-year-old guy, it must have left an impression, right?
But I can attest to this as you think about the educational component to it. Um, there was a time where I was doing PR for a health organization, the American Lung Association, to be exact. And as you can imagine, we had a lot of campaigns geared toward kids, just in that same demographic they were talking about, 11, 12-year-olds. And we would pass out, so we have all these little kits that they'd give to schools. And no, it's like the whole philosophy was, no, we're just going to go hit these kids with everything we've got. Well, we would pass out these rulers, and you could flip over flip the ruler over, and you'd see two pictures. One was a healthy lung, and one was a lung of 20 years of smoking. And so if you think about, and they were, even the healthy lung is pretty gross to look at, number one. Number 2, wow, that's 20 years of smoking, but I'm 11, so I don't, I'm nowhere near that, and I haven't started smoking. But again, the messages were extreme, the messaging was extreme, and sometimes, in retrospect, going, man, it's like we're our process, our philosophy is let's scare the crap out of these kids, and
Yeah.
if we save one kid from buying a carton of smokes down the road, we've done our job, Jeff. We've done our job.
There is a famous to me because I read the backstory later on it, but there's a famous case of one of these very popular film reels that we saw back in the day where it wasn't anything like that. They weren't trying to shock you. They weren't trying to show some gross thing. It was an experiment, right? So this would normally be shown in a science class. And you may remember this one, Chris. The guy, the narrator, he puts on a special pair of glasses, and when you look through these glasses, everything is flipped, it's upside down. And he narrates his experience only wearing these glasses and never taking them off for presumably like a week or 2 weeks. And the whole point of this little experiment was your brain will eventually adjust, right? So obviously, Chris, try walking around when everything is upside down. It's almost impossible, right? And you're going to get vertigo
Mhm.
and you're going to throw up, which this guy did. And one morning
Nice.
he wakes up and his brain has flipped the image. Hey, man, don't worry. It took a while. There was a little red tape back there at the cerebellum, but we did figure out how to flip this fucking thing back around so you can now live your life. Good luck. And of course, Chris, experiment complete. Wow, isn't that interesting? Look at the power of the human brain. Wow. And then what happens, Chris? What do you think happens next?
He can't go back the other way. He has to wear these glasses for the rest of his life. His brain explodes.
Any one of those is kind of what happened, right? So he takes off the glasses, and of course, no surprise, now the world is flipped again. Even though he is seeing the world as it really is, he's not. The brain is like, what the F? We Do you know how much effort we just went through? over here in the medulla oblongata to get this fucking thing fixed. And now you're bringing in that signal, right? The brain was pissed. And so
Okay.
the trauma that this guy
The
went
brain was
through
pissed.
the first time was bad enough, but the second time around, where now he's seeing a flipped image and he doesn't have the glasses on. So what actually happened is this guy had a mental breakdown. He had an actual full-on nervous breakdown. I don't think that it led to him taking his own life, but I think it was touch and go. Like he was ready to do that. Eventually, my recollection is it did come back around again, but dude, is that not the weirdest? Have you ever seen that one? Do you remember this?
I haven't seen that one, but I'm gonna have to hunt it down. I don't even
Yeah.
understand. Hopefully, yeah, that guy got his literal shit back together and had a normal life, or that, or he was well compensated for having to wear
Yeah.
those upside down glasses for the rest of his
Yeah,
life. I mean,
Chris,
good Lord.
I'm sure he was well compensated by the school district for making a public service science film. I'm sure he got a lot of money for that.
We were gonna give you $250, but we bumped it up to an even $300. So,
Yeah, and then
you
later
know,
on when he says, "I'm gonna sue," they're all looking at each other like, "Hey,
taxable, of course.
this is still the 1960s. There's nothing in place for you to even do that. So, oh well,
Sue?
how about fuck
Sue
you?"
who?
Yeah. Sue who? Sue what? How would you even go about that? Yeah, so you know,
Maybe they did him a solid and said, "Hey, we know these guys named Sid and Marty Croft, and they're looking for writers. So maybe you can go get a job with them and look at everything upside down." And who knows, maybe everything ended up okay.
he became later the executive producer of Lidsville. Yeah. Those are my recollections of those films. I know we saw a whole
Mhm.
bunch of other ones as well, but Chris, I just want to give you a huge
Mhm.
shout out for taking the heat, literally, as you're the AV guy, because as I recall, those film projectors put off about, what would you say, like not quite the surface of the sun, but if you got within 3 inches of that
Yes.
goddamn bulb, holy shit.
Yes. Um, Thank you for calling that out, because yes, in the event that the film got stuck or jammed or something, and you had to you yeah, and you had to just approach it like you were, like fixing a heat shield on the space shuttle, to the point of like, and no, there was no gloves. There was nothing.
Oh,
So
well,
it was
okay.
like it was like playing Operation, right? I'm not gonna touch the sides. It's gonna beep, except it's gonna burn like 2 layers of skin off of my fingers. So yes, you had to, and that was also when you were even when you were done with it, even when the film was over, it's like, yeah, don't touch it. Everything's hot. Don't touch the bulb. Don't touch even like the casing of the projector,
Don't even
because
look at it,
again,
man.
everything was on fire.
Yeah.
So and so yeah, absolutely. I don't think, and yeah, nobody. I don't think we ever signed anything that said, any kind of waiver, or I had to get permission or a doctor's note or anything like that. Um, it was just the typical, no, not wearing a seatbelt, kind of not wearing a helmet kind of approach to everything that we had in our lives back then. It was like,
Yeah.
here's this scorching hot piece of heavy, right? If that ever fell on you, you would have gotten really hurt, because those projectors weighed a ton, as we talked about
Well,
before. But
I mean,
yeah,
it looked like they were made out of lead. They might have been. I mean, they looked really heavy duty, like a murder weapon for sure. And I
hey,
love your operation reference, by the way. That was awesome, because I'm thinking, take out molten bulb. Ha ha ha. From the from the commercial. Chris, can I
wait,
do a side can I do a side poll here if you don't mind? And here's the side poll. Why?
absolutely.
Why was there a whole bunch of TV commercials that we all loved back then? A lot of them for Milton Bradley games, but also cereal, where every kid
Hmm.
had a super thick Jersey accent. Do you remember that at all? It was like, I win. I'm the sole survivor. He won't eat it. He hates everything. He likes it. Hey, Mikey. Hey, Mikey. Yeah. I guess there was a big casting agent yeah, on the East Coast. I don't know what happened there.
They like, give me a kid that talks like a 37-year-old, you know, dock worker, right? A longshoreman.
I'm picturing some chain smoking lady from Brooklyn that just became the premier
Mhm.
casting agent for those kids back then.
Oh no, you're caught in a mousetrap. It's like, is this Archie Bunker? It's like, what is it again? So you're supposed to, middle American kids are supposed to, that voice is supposed to go, hey, yeah, it sounds like everybody I know. It sounded like nobody I knew, right? Except people from other commercials. Like you said, they were all produced in Hackensack, New Jersey, or, something like that, Asbury Park, whatever. It's hilarious. Not a lot of West Coast representation, at least at that time, it looks like.
I win. Where I can't see. Here. Diagonally. Pretty sneaky, sis. Right? It's just, now I might be exaggerating. Maybe that one had a California accent, but I feel like in my brain that was also another one where they were definitely kids from Brooklyn. I don't know why that just cracks me up for some reason.
Well, even the reference, and Jeff, you had brothers. Nobody called their sister sis. But hey, sis. But that was, again, the conceit of some sort of writer saying, like, this is how kids talk. It's like, have you heard a kid talk? Right? Do you have any kids? Have you ever been a kid? Any of those categories, anything ever makes sense to you? But no, let's just, from the sole survivor to, hey, kid, hey, sis, to, oh, no, you're caught in the mousetrap. But these are the people that made board games based on whether a cute boy was going to call you, right? So
That's right. Wait, go back to the mousetrap one though. What was the accent? Because I can't hear it or picture it in my mind. What did it sound like? Oh no.
well,
What did they say?
no, you're caught in a mousetrap.
But,
It's kind of.
but who is that? Like, what does that sound like to you? Was that like a character actor or was it a kid? I mean, was it a narrator that said
It was
that?
a
Or
narrator. It was a
oh, okay.
narrator because. And first of all, if you remember Mousetrap at all? You remember Mousetrap?
Of course. Yeah.
Did you ever play Mousetrap?
Roll the dice and move your mice. That.
You didn't. Nobody played because nobody understood the rules. All you wanted to do was to set up the whole Rube Goldberg device and then to get it to be able to knock that big ball bearing, to roll down the slide thing, and then end up in the barrel, and then to have the guy in the old-timey bathing suit jump off the diving board and land into the little, pool. That was it. That's all we did. It's like dominoes. Did you ever play dominoes? Nobody played dominoes. You just set the dominoes up and knocked them over.
That's right. Yes, we did. You set them up in as long of a line as you could and knocked them over. And then it lit off an M80 at the end of it is what I remember. Well, shoot. As with all of these episodes, we're actually not sure other than, hey, film strips or hey, film projectors and Chris coming by to watch a movie with us in 6th or 7th or 8th or 9th grade. We don't know what's going to happen on these conversations, guys. These are pretty free form, but I think we dove pretty deep into that topic. What do you think, Chris? I think we
so.
covered most of the key aspects of that experience. If anybody listening in has any memories, any great things that you saw on film day, right, in whatever class you were in, please hit us up at nicepollpod@gmail.com or just go to the website and leave a comment. Again, nicepollpod.com. We would love to hear your story. We would love to talk about it on air. And if you want to come on and talk about it in person, well, we're going to have to do a background check and a few things first, but yeah,
Drug
that would be
test.
fun.
Yeah,
That's right.
absolutely.
If you're not taking drugs, you have no business on this show, right? So,
hey, whoa.
well, Chris, for you and all of the other brave souls that narrowly missed permanent injury back in the day, and certainly had your reputations marred permanently for even touching that thing and manning it, we, Chris, salute you. Until next time.
Until next time, Jeff.
Nasty.